caliber team. But if we're able to parlay that into a good finish, and hopefully win a couple of games and make a nice run of the playoffs and set ourselves up some really big things in the next couple of years.
Yes, it should be helpful after this Furman game, knock on wood, that we win, and then we have that 2-week layoff if we get the bye in the first round.
Yeah, that's exactly right. Yep.
So that'll help us regroup from some injuries, and then so we can get on the focus of making a good, deep playoff run, and then snowballing that into the following year, because there's only 12 seniors on this team, and really 8 of them are – out of the 12 seniors, 8 of them play regularly, and then out of most of them, they do have backups that have stepped in and made a big impact this year. So the future is definitely very bright.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, when you look at our starting lineup, we're gonna return 10 out of 11 guys on offense. Running back's the only position we have to replace next year. Obviously, a big position. We do have some talent behind them, some young guys that I think can do a good job. But we return our entire offensive line, Jamal, our entire receiving core. So we're going to be definitely a force on offense next year. And defensively it's a little more of a concern because we have 4 seniors that are just huge contributors with Demetrius McCray and Troy Sanders and Kimbrough and Greer there at linebacker. But, in the not so much at linebacker, but in the secondary, the guys we had that were projected starters coming into this year that are going to be back will really help to offset that, with Doug Middleton being back next year and Dante Blackman as well, who both got medical red shirts. So, I really feel like, with the exception of figuring out what we're going to do with the linebacker spot, which, to be quite honest, my mind is at ease a lot more after watching Carl Anderson play the last 2 weeks. So I think in general we're going to have just all around a huge, a great foundation to build on, and I think we could do some huge things going forward the next couple of years.
Yes, and one of the areas that's kind of unknown, but there's a lot to be excited about, is running back, because we lose both Miller and Chisholm. And next year we get Michael Frazier back, and there's been a lot of talk and excitement about Tyshawn Holloway, who's redshirting this year. He's the product out of Asheville, and he's the kid who came up. He's graduated a semester early from high school and came up to Boone. So when he steps on the field next year, he'll have been on campus training in the weight room, taking reps for 18 months when he first steps on the field.
Yeah, and Tyshawn Holloway is, from what I saw in the FanFest scrimmage and highlights I've seen of him and seeing a little bit of him play in high school, the kid's the real deal. He turned down a lot of big schools to come to App. He had offers from Duke, North Carolina, and Georgia Tech out of high school. And I'm of the opinion that if you can run the ball for Paul Johnson, you can probably run the ball for pretty much anybody. And he's a great player, and I'm really excited about what the future holds there. So that's we've got a lot to be excited about looking forward. And as far as looking back at this past weekend, I know you and I are both fortunate enough to be down in Statesboro for the game this past weekend. But for those people listening that weren't, I'll go ahead and just give a brief recap of the game and how it went, and then you and I can talk about that a little bit and the positives and negatives to take away from the game. It was a game that started off. Georgia Southern really came out of the gate strong. We put together a nice drive to start it, but it stalled out. We had to settle for a 28-yard field goal, and that 3-0 lead did not last very long. Georgia Southern marched right back, scored on a 4-yard run by William Banks, which is the beginning of just a monster day for him. He was playing B-back, filling in for injured Dominique Swope. We turned it over on downs, then he was right back in the end zone from 20 yards out. So it was 14-3, seems like, before it started. The crowd was loud. There was 22,155 there, which is the biggest crowd they've had since Jeff Munkin took over at Georgia Southern. It's the
biggest crowd in 5 years since their Furman game in 2007.
Yeah, biggest crowd in several years. I believe I read that it was the 7th largest in the history of Paulson Stadium. So it was one of the top 10 biggest crowds they've ever had. And as you and I can both attest to, it was loud in there and it was hot. It was in the 80s. It was sunny. It was and at that point when we were down 14-3 there in the first quarter, as a fan, I kind of had that sinking feeling like I've seen this movie before. After what happened with the other two option teams, I was kind of on the edge of my seat. I was thinking it might start to get ugly, but fortunately, the team kept their composure a lot better than I did at that point, and it was set up. Stephen Miller ran in a 1-yard touchdown that was set up by a long reception to Sean Price, who had himself a career day. Trimmed the lead to 14-10. Held Georgia Southern to a missed field goal. Seemed like we might go ahead and take the lead then. But instead, we went 3 and out. It was really the only questionable play calling series of the day, I thought, when we brought Rod Chisholm in for his first carries of the day and ran it 3 consecutive times. Had to punt it right back to him, and then William Banks found the end zone again, 36 yards out, and next thing you know, it was 21-10.
Yes, I will say that at first the running game was getting nowhere, and it was just you got that front line that you got Brent Russell up there who surprisingly only had 2 tackles on the day, and I think that's a credit to our coaching staff to put double teams on him and run away from him because he's just a beast. And obviously he's a very fiery player. There was a couple of times where he made our offense jump off sides, and he made sure that the referees knew it by pushing the offensive lineman over.
Yeah, I definitely agree. He's Brent Russell. He is a special player, and the fact that he was limited statistically on the day, I think, goes right along with what you're saying. One, that we made sure to give him a lot of attention from our offensive line, and two, we ran away from him. Really the only drive that really even tried much in terms of running the ball right at him was that 3 and out with Rod Chisholm. And then, I understand the idea behind it because they had just driven down the field, had a pretty long extended drive. Fortunately, they missed the field goal, so they didn't get any points on the board. But our defense had just been out there, and I think the idea with Satterfield up there calling the plays, he learned from that. We didn't see another drive like that the rest of the day. We tried to go up there and run it right at him, get a first down, didn't work, and didn't waste any time, didn't do it again. So
Yes.
So that was great. So we were even though we were down 21-10, we were able to keep our composure. And then after we got the ball on a fumble, Jamal Jackson hit Sean Price over the middle. He broke a tackle, cut to his left, and just went streaking down the sidelines for 56 yards. Obviously, the Georgia Southern fans and the Georgia Southern defenders both thought he stepped out of bounds. Their secondary seemed to kind of give up on it a little bit. We've seen replays, we've seen photo evidence that showed that Price appeared to keep his foot in bounds. At absolute worst, it was questionable and cannot have been overturned even if they did review it. So,
yeah, that was just one of those things that when I looked at it on the Georgia Southern video board, you looked at it and said, "Oh, we got away with one." But I guess it was partially because of the shadow, because the way he stepped, the shadow was just perfect, so it kind of obstructed the view a little bit. But on closer inspection, he looks like he actually did keep his feet in. But I mean, I had Georgia Southern fans saying he was 3 feet out of bounds. He was so far out of bounds it wasn't funny, and then just looking at it, and he actually wasn't, was just kind of satisfying that it was legit. And obviously this was a huge momentum booster in the game because that kind of showed the Georgia Southern team that we weren't going to go away. We were down 11 at that point, then we got that touchdown, and then at that point we knew we were in a ball game.
Yeah, you're exactly right. You're exactly right. So he, it was a big play. It was reminiscent of a play that was similar, although not so much in the out of bounds aspect of it, but similar in that when you saw the secondary give up on it, very similar to that Aaron Millette touchdown that he caught in Boone when he ran out of bounds, and I guess later they ruled that he was forced out of bounds, but he came right back in. Demetrius McCray gave up on the play, and he just caught it and walked into the end zone. It was very similar to that. Just goes to show how important it is to not stop playing until that whistle blows, and Sean Price didn't. Man, I think he knew he didn't step out of bounds, and he took right on off down the line. And if they were willing to give him a free ride into the end zone, he gladly took him up on it. So it was a great play for us. And I think I actually misspoke. That was actually immediately following that Georgia Southern touchdown. It was the following possession that Georgia Southern fumbled on a botched pitch. We got the ball back, drove right down the field again. Jamal connected with Malachi Jones on a touchdown in the right corner of the end zone. It was a great catch by him. That ball was not an excellent throw. He turned around over his right shoulder, caught that, got into the end zone. First career touchdown. Could not have come at a bigger time for him, too. I was so happy to see him get in the end zone for the first time this year.
Yes, absolutely. It was, as you said, it wasn't the greatest throw, but it was a great route that was ran that he separated from the defender for that split second that the ball came in, so it wasn't even contested when he caught the ball, and then he just landed in the end zone, and we took a lead that honestly many of us thought that it was kind of looking back and looking at the stats, it was kind of amazing that we did have the lead. Obviously, that was created by the turnover on the pitch where our defense started to adjust and we started to pressure the quarterback into making that awkward pitch, and they have had trouble with that pitch all year. I know he was originally the starter for Georgia Southern, but he just couldn't handle the pitch. I think they fumbled it 8 times against the Citadel, and that was one of the reasons why McKinnon came in. And even though McKinnon's he's not as good as athlete as Ute, he could do the pitch and he could actually sustain drives and not kill the momentum.
Yeah, you're exactly right. I saw going into the game, it was like a mind-boggling stat. I can't remember how many of them they lost, but they had 22 fumbles coming into that game. So, I mean, they had a propensity to put the ball on the ground, and luckily we were able to get in the backfield and force them to do it again. And I'm with you. Sitting there at that game, I felt very, very fortunate to have a lead going into halftime at that game. It was really, just an offensive shootout in the first half. Nobody was playing any defense. We had over 700 yards of total offense. They had 382. We had 320, and I had 52 points scored there in the first half. Really just, you really didn't have a second to breathe watching that first half. But, I felt very fortunate for us to go, to go to the locker room ahead. And, on a more, I guess, just a personal level, I felt great for Malachi Jones that he was able to get that pass. He's a kid that, he seems like he's a real quiet guy. He's a hard worker. The opening game of the year when Sean Price was suspended, he really stepped in. He played a great game. First collegiate game in front of 50,000 people at East Carolina, about a 105-degree day, and he went out there and he really played great. He earned his spot in the rotation, and when Sean Price came back, obviously he was the number one target. He was the top guy, but you didn't hear any complaining from Malachi about kind of not getting the touches he thought he should get. I was just really, really happy for him. And about 3 or 4 weeks into the season, for a while we had Sims McElfresh there as the fourth wide receiver, and Malachi just played his way into that role. And just very, he's gotten his yards this year. He's got a lot of big plays. He got a huge first down for us at Chattanooga. He got a huge first down for us against Montana, and it was just great to finally see him kind of reap the rewards and get into the end zone for us.
Yes, he's got very good fundamentals for a freshman wide receiver, and I very much look forward to him. He and Price could be a very for the next 3 years, because obviously Price, he's got natural gifts that make him the more popular player, kind of obviously like Brian Quick. But Malachi is, I think, more like that kind of dirty route receiver, a lot like Matt Klein, where he's got very good fundamentals. He can make that big catch, and it's just is just a very, very humble kid, very, very fun to watch, and I very much look forward to seeing his development over the next 3 years.